Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about the Treasury of Atreus, and some people also call it the Tomb of Agamemnon. This isn't just a pile of old stones. It's a 3,000-year-old building that was so well made, it still stands today. The Treasury of Atreus is in Greece, on a place called the Peloponnese Peninsula. It was built around 1350 to 1250 BC, during the time when the Mycenaean civilization was at its strongest. To really understand this building, we need to talk about the Aegean Sea. The Aegean Sea is that part of the Mediterranean Sea that sits between Greece and Turkey. It's filled with hundreds of small islands, scattered everywhere like pieces of a broken puzzle. This area is the cradle of ancient Greek culture. There were two great civilizations here. The first was on the island of Crete, which is the largest island in the Aegean Sea. We call this the Minoan civilization, and they lasted from about 2000 BC to 1500 BC. It was the first real civilization in Europe. Then, around 1500 BC, another civilization came from mainland Greece. They were called the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans invaded Crete and destroyed the Minoan civilization. Then they became the most powerful people in the Aegean for the next 400 years. The Mycenaeans were warriors and traders. They built strong cities with huge walls, and they buried their kings in amazing tombs. The Treasury of Atreus is the largest and best preserved of these tombs. Why is it called a treasury if it's a tomb? That's because when people found it thousands of years later, they thought it was a place where kings kept their gold and treasure. The name Treasury of Atreus first appeared in a book written by a Roman traveler named Pausanias in the 2nd century AD. By that time, the tomb had already been empty for hundreds of years, and local people just told stories about it being a treasure house. The other name, Tomb of Agamemnon, came much later. In the 1800s, a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann came to Greece. Schliemann believed that every story in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey was true. He believed that this big tomb was where Agamemnon was buried. Agamemnon was the king of Mycenae in the Greek myths. He was the leader of all the Greek armies that fought in the Trojan War. The Mycenaeans didn't just dig a hole in the ground. They built this tomb right into the side of a hill. It's made entirely of stone, and it has three main parts: a long entrance walkway, a huge doorway, and the round main room with a domed ceiling. The first part is called the dromos. That's just a fancy word for the long walkway that leads to the tomb. This walkway is 36 meters long and 6 meters wide. The walls on both sides are made of huge, carefully cut blocks of stone. At the end of the walkway is the entrance to the tomb. Above the door, there's a big triangular empty space. This is called the relieving triangle, and it's a very clever piece of engineering. All the weight of the stone above the door would normally push down and break the big stone that goes across the top of the door. But this triangle takes that weight and moves it to the sides onto the strong walls. That's the typical Mycenaean style. On both sides of the door, there were two half columns made of green marble. But unfortunately, most of that decoration is gone now. In 1801, a British lord named Lord Elgin sent people here. He's the same man who took most of the sculptures from the Parthenon in Athens and brought them to London. He took parts of these marble columns and some other decorations from the Treasury of Atreus too. Today, those pieces are in the British Museum. When you walk through the big door, you enter the main room. The room is perfectly round. It's 14.6 meters across and 13.4 meters high. The ceiling is a perfect dome made of 33 layers of stone. Each layer of stone sticks out a little bit further than the one below it. As the layers go up, they get closer and closer together until they meet at the top. At the very top, there's one big round stone that holds everything together. This kind of dome is called a corbelled dome. There's no cement or anything holding the stones together. The whole dome stays up just because of gravity and the friction between the stones. The Mycenaeans were such good engineers that they could build something this big and this strong. This dome was the largest dome in the entire world for over 1,000 years. It held that record until the Romans built the Pantheon in Rome in 126 AD. That's an incredible achievement. We think the inside of the dome was once even more beautiful. There's evidence that the stones were decorated with gold rosettes, little flower shapes made of gold. So when you stood inside, looking up at the dome, it would have looked like a sky full of golden stars. Off to the side of the main room, there's a smaller square room. This is probably where the king's body was actually placed. The main room was probably for all the treasure and offerings that were buried with him. The Treasury of Atreus got its name because people thought it was full of gold, and they were probably right. Unfortunately, the tomb was robbed in ancient times, long before anyone wrote about it. When Pausanias visited in the 2nd century AD, it was already completely empty. We don't know who robbed it or when, but we can guess how much treasure was there by looking at other Mycenaean tombs that weren't robbed. Heinrich Schliemann found some other tombs at Mycenae called shaft graves. In those graves, he found over 15 kilograms of gold, that's 33 pounds of pure gold. He found gold masks, gold cups, gold jewelry, and gold weapons. He found bronze swords with beautiful decorations and daggers with pictures inlaid into them. He even found small objects from Egypt and Syria, which shows that the Mycenaeans traded with people all over the Mediterranean. If those smaller shaft graves had that much gold, imagine how much treasure was in the Treasury of Atreus, the largest and most important tomb at Mycenae. The door of the tomb was said to be covered with rubies and emeralds, but all of that is gone now, stolen thousands of years ago. For hundreds of years after it was robbed, the tomb was just a hole in the hill. Shepherds used it as a shelter from the rain and cold. They built fires inside, and you can still see the black smoke stains on the walls today. Then, in the 1800s, people started to get interested in ancient history again. We already talked about Lord Elgin taking pieces of the columns in 1801. Then, in 1810, the Turkish governor of the area also dug around the tomb and took whatever was left. Heinrich Schliemann came in 1874 and did some digging, but he was more interested in the shaft graves inside the city of Mycenae. He found those famous gold masks there, including the one he called the Mask of Agamemnon. It is the combination of engineering and mystery, more than 3,000 years after its construction. Hidden inside a Greek hillside, silent, dark, and still enormous.